All right, this is my first time moderating a panel, so that's why they started me out with the little guys. I've never seen anything like this. These guys are so amazing, and they're so accomplished that I actually could say that they don't need an introduction, but I'm not going to do that because accomplishments this impressive should always be celebrated, so I'm going to take the liberty of telling you about them. I had to have a cheat sheet because they've accomplished so much I can't possibly remember it all. Start with David Baldacci. His novels have been translated into more than 45 languages and sold in more than 80 countries. Over 110 million copies are in print worldwide. You may not know this, but he's a recovering lawyer. He practiced for 9 years in Washington, D.C. as both a trial and a corporate attorney before becoming a full-time writer. Now, his work has found its way to both the big and the small screens. His best-selling novel, Wish You Well, was adapted as a feature-length film starring Academy Award winner Ellen Burstyn and also Josh Lucas and Mackenzie Foy. And his King and Maxwell novels have just been taken to the small screen. TNT has picked up the series. It's a 1-hour drama. It's going to air on TNT starting June 10th. Don't miss that. It's going to be fabulous. David and his wife founded the Wish You Well Foundation to support adult and family literacy in the United States. David also established the Feeding Body and Mind program in partnership with Feeding America, which is the largest domestic hunger relief organization in the United States, to donate books to families in need. Michael Connelly is a best-selling author of 25 novels and 1 work of nonfiction. He has more than 45 million copies of his books sold worldwide, and he's translated into 36 languages. He's a former newspaper reporter who worked the crime beat at Los Angeles Times, also at the Fort Lauderdale Sun-Sentinel. Michael has won numerous awards for both his journalism and his fiction. His very first novel, The Black Echo, won the prestigious Mystery Writers of America Edgar Award for Best First Novel in 1992. In March of 2012, he became a knight. The France Ministry of Culture and Communication appointed him a Knight of Arts and Letters in acknowledgement of his talent and his accomplishments as a world-renowned novelist. Michael's work has also been adapted as a feature-length film, and Blood Work was the first one adapted by, written by, and directed by, and starred in by Clint Eastwood. And then the second one that you all know, the best-selling novel, A Lincoln Lawyer, starring Mickey Haller, which was Matthew McConaughey, more recently known as Magic Mike. Michael's work is also on the way to be adapted to television. He's teamed up with Fuse Entertainment and Eric Overmyer, who worked on The Killing and Treme, to package and produce a television series starring his legendary character Harry Bosch. Michael's currently working as the executive producer on a documentary film about the late jazz saxophonist Frank Morgan, titled Sound of Redemption, The Frank Morgan Project. The film will be a tribute to the man who's been an inspiration to Michael's writing for the last 20 years. And I believe it's going to be coming out this summer, Michael, is that right? Yay, that should be good. George Pelecanos is the author of several highly praised and best-selling novels, including The Cut, What It Was, The Way Home, The Turnaround, The Night Gardener. I could go on. He's been labeled perhaps the best living American crime writer by Stephen King. He's a New York Times best-selling author and a 2-time winner of the Los Angeles Times Book Prize, and he regularly garners 4-star reviews from coast to coast. George has authored 21 novels to date, which span 5 different series, the most recent of which features Spiro Lucas. He's a private detective and, in my opinion, a major hottie. He is. George is also an independent film producer and essayist and has received numerous international writing awards. He was a producer and Emmy-nominated writer for The Wire, which won the Writers Guild of America Award for Outstanding Drama Series. If you don't know, the Writers Guild of America is for screenwriters, and that's a tough crowd. So to win Outstanding Drama Series from them is quite something. George also won the Edgar Award for Best Television Teleplay for The Wire. George was a writer and co-producer on the HBO miniseries The Pacific, which was in part his tribute to his father, Peter Pelecanos, who served as a Marine in the Philippines. And he was an George, not his father, was an executive producer and writer for the acclaimed series Treme. His previous novel, The Way Home, was one of the few books on President Obama's summer reading list in 2009. Scott Turow is also a lawyer. He has not recovered. Like myself, he still practices. But to the world of fiction, I would say that he is nothing less than the originator of genre. Before Scott came along, if you'd asked anyone, whether it's author, publisher, or reader, about legal thriller, they would say it was an oxymoron. But with the release of Presumed Innocent in 1987, Scott Turow proved them all wrong. The story of Rusty Savage, a homicide prosecutor charged with the murder of a fellow prosecutor who he had an affair with, is captivated not just the nation, but the world. With over 5 million copies sold and translations into more than 25 languages, it was a novel that justifiably is credited with having created the genre of the legal thriller. And now, my confession to you, when I prepared to write this third book that's coming out in June, Killer Ambition, I decided to take my lead into the courtroom to have her try a case. And in preparation for that, I went back and read Presumed Innocent. And I have to tell you, I remembered the characters and the story, I remembered all the twists, and nevertheless, I found the story absolutely riveting all over again. I couldn't put it down. Presumed Innocent, of course, became a huge... You guys got it? Back? Good, thanks. Presumed Innocent was a huge hit as a film, starring Harrison Ford. I'm sure you remember it. Then that hit was followed by 9 more best-selling works of fiction, including Innocent, The Burden of Proof, and Personal Injuries, which Time magazine called the best fiction novel of 1999. I don't know why they had to say fiction novel, because I don't know of any fiction, or non-fiction novels. Anyway, we'll talk to the Times about that. All told, Scott's books have been translated into more than 34 languages, sold more than 30 million copies worldwide, and have been adapted into film and television projects. He frequently contributes essays and op-ed pieces to publications, such as the New York Times, Washington Post, Vanity Fair, The New Yorker, The Atlantic, and Playboy, proving that people do read it for the articles. And I'm sure that Scott's crowning achievement is that he would agree his proudest moment is a member of the Rock Bottom Remainders. You've heard of them. The band made up of the greatest writers of our time, including Amy Tan, Stephen King, Maya Angelou, Ridley Pearson, and Dave Barry. What did you play?
I sang.
You sang? Damn, that is impressive.
And it's a zombie band. We're coming back.
Are you, okay, the Rock Bottom Remainders had disbanded. You're coming back?
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Is Scott's mic on? Can you hear him? No. Can you guys fix it? I may have to translate for you. All right.
It's our first of many revivals.
That's great. That's great. You know what? I can't wait. Tell me when you're coming out, because I'm going to go see it. Fabulous. All right. So with that said, what I wanted to do is start out by literally starting at the beginning. What got you started writing? Michael, I heard that you intended initially to follow in your father's footsteps in building construction. Good idea. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you
Oh,
went
now
to
this
school,
works good.
Right?
You
went,
should have this. Yeah, I mean, my father built houses and did things like that, and I was just going to follow the family business. But when I got to college and got away from the family, you start exploring stuff on your own, and did a lot of reading and a lot of skipping of classes, and eventually thought wanted to be a writer and went into journalism as kind of a means to an end. I would say I wanted to be a crime writer, not just a writer. I wanted to write crime novels because that's what I love to read. And so I went into journalism because hopefully that would get me close to, the world I wanted to write about.
and it did.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like a master plan now, but, it was kind of a hopeful thing. It was more like, hey, if you can never end up writing a novel, it will be a pretty interesting job.
Yeah.
So.
And as it turned out.
Yep.
So, David, you initially became a lawyer. Was that intended to be a goal of, did you always want to be a lawyer, or did you, and then discover it was really boring and then decided to go and write novels, or did you always want to write novels and therefore became a lawyer?
Well, I never woke up every morning and thought, thank you, God, for another day to live and sue people. No, I never had that ambition. As a little kid, I just told crap all the time. I was just like this big storyteller, usually to get myself out of trouble with principals, truancy officers, other parents. And one day my mom went to a bookstore and brought back a journal, and she said, why don't you write some of these things down? It would be nice if you did that. And I started writing little stories down, and years later I wrote short stories and screenplays and finally into novels. And years later I asked my mom, I said, why did you think to do that? It was like a turning point in my life. It was so nice of you to do that. You were a great mom. She said, I did it just to shut you the hell up. Because I needed a little peace and quiet in my life. Thank you very much. But really from there it was, I went to law school and became a lawyer because I was writing short stories, and even if you sell short stories, they don't actually give you a check. They give you like free copies of the magazine with your byline, and that's how you're paid. And since you can't eat magazines, I went to law school and became a lawyer to support myself and trying to break into writing.
Oh, that.
I did not know that.
Do I need this, guys? Can you hear me without it? Okay, now I'm going to pass this to Scott. Scott, tell us what inspired you. When did you get inspired?
Well, my mom wanted to be a novelist. She was a would-be, and I loved my mother. She was a great force in my life, so I guess I took on her ambition, and by the time I was 11 years old, I was announcing that I was going to be a novelist, and that continued to be my ambition, through college, and then I was a writing fellow at Stanford and then started teaching there. And the writing life was driving me crazy. It wasn't that I didn't want to do it, I did, but the inwardness of it was very hard on me, and I noticed that most of my friends that I was making and had from college were lawyers, so rather than going on as an English professor, I decided to go to law school, and as I always say, it was the great break of my literary career, because it gave me a subject that I was passionate about. And so for me, it was just a happy melding. And I published this book about being a law student, 1L, and then decided that had worked, so I was going to go on in the law. I started practicing and writing on the morning commuter train, and long way down the road, that became Presumed Innocent.
And you wrote another nonfiction book as well about death penalties, right?
Right. I wrote a book called Ultimate Punishment, which is about my experiences as a lawyer with capital punishment. And I was on the commission in Illinois that recommended reforms that ultimately led to the abolition of the death penalty in Illinois. And, as a prosecutor, I was pretty ambivalent about the death penalty. As a defense lawyer, I began to realize that it was unworkable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we could take a whole day talking about that.
Yes, we
Especially in the wake of the Jodi Arias case. So much. Maybe we'll get back to it. Maybe we'll get lucky. Thank you, Scott. So, George, when did you get bit? How did you get bit by the writing bug?
Well, I was a movie freak, really, when I was growing up, and I wanted to make movies. But I took a long, circuitous path to get to where I was as a writer. I had an idea for a book, and I was working all these jobs after college. I was working in bars and kitchens and so on, selling women's shoes. And when I got to be 30 years old, I just said, well, I got to stop dreaming about this and do something. And I wrote a book. And I wrote it in longhand. I mean, it was totally in the dark. I'd never tried to write anything before. And I sent it up to New York, blind, because I couldn't get an agent. And a year later, a publisher got back to me and said they just picked it up off the slush pile, and they wanted to publish it. Yeah, that happened. It used to happen.
Yeah.
But it does happen. So, and I just found that I loved it, and I kept going. Here I am.
Now, you actually transitioned into writing for the screen as well.
Yes.
So I was curious if you could tell us the heaven and hell of each of them, because writing novels has one kind of hell, because as Scott says, it's very inward. You really do wind up kind of in your own bubble. But screenwriting's different. You have to, especially in television. Can you talk about your experiences, how different?
Yeah, I mean, it's what Scott said is true. You sit in a room by yourself for 6 months or whatever it is, and you start to get socially retarded. And I didn't really, I like going out and being with people. So working on movies and television has allowed me to, instead of being by myself, I get out of a van in the morning at 7 in the morning, whatever, and there's 100 people there, and in my opinion, they're all artists. I really enjoy building something together with these people, hair and makeup, costumes, locations. All these people are artists in their own way. So it's not just the writer that's the architect of that. And the one thing you have to do is you have to tamp down your ego a little bit and realize that there's a lot of filters between what you write and what ends up on the screen. And when you accept that, most writers aren't going to say this, but sometimes the actors and the directors make my work better than it was on the page. You know what I mean? So I'm all for it.
Yeah, I have to say, when I was writing for the People, that was a show on Lifetime, and it was a show about the DA's office in Los Angeles, which for some reason they thought I knew something about. And I wrote a monologue for a judge who was being stalked, And I wrote it like at midnight. We had no time to write, but midnight to 2, it was awful. Let me just tell you, it was windy, it was long, it was awful, it was boring, it sucked. And then I came back the next morning, I said, I'm gonna fix it. I don't want anybody to have to memorize this, because actors come in and they read it, and then we decide whether or not we're gonna cast them. So we have all these actors lined up in the hallway, they've already studied it, they're ready with my long, windy, boring, horrible thing. And then Viola Davis sat down. Do you know who she is? She's been in all these films, right? Viola Davis sat down and she gave the monologue, and everyone goes, and all of a sudden I was a genius. I still knew I sucked, but she was amazing. So yeah, they can really do us some very big favors.
By the way, Marcia didn't get to talk about herself, but her new book is really good. If you're looking for a good legal thriller, what's the name of the book again?
Killer Ambition.
It's very good.
Thank you, George. Thank you so much.
You're
Now, Scott and Michael and David, you've seen your stuff adapted to the screen, and to big screen, to little screen. I want to talk to you about what that is like, because at some point a writer for the television or for the movie takes over and does things to your character. How you felt about that? What was your involvement in it? What was your experience of it, Scott?
Well, since I have the microphone, I'll start. You know, I've always enjoyed that process, but I do keep my distance from it. And, you know, although I just finished a pilot script for TNT, and have slowly been drawn into that world. But, you know, I accept the fact that they really are different media. You know, a novel, I arrived on the set of Presumed Innocent, and Brian Dennehy, who's become a really dear friend, said to me, look, if we filmed everything in your novel, it would be about 14 hours.
Yeah.
And she said, and he said that, you know, you have to accept the fact that the best movie based on a novel is going to be only as good as the best abridgment. But once you accept that it's going to change, it's going to get shrunken, that it's for an even broader audience, and everybody up here is blessed as a writer to have a large audience, but it's small compared to the audience that's necessary for a successful film. You know, once you accept that process is going to involve changing your work, you can sit back and enjoy it. And as George says, the people who make films in this country are, generally speaking, an incredibly talented bunch of people, and they're a pleasure to work with.
So, Michael, what did you think of Mickey Haller? Mickey Haller is such an iconic character. He's so LA. He's so LA, practicing out of his car. How did you feel about the experience of seeing him adapt?
Well, it was a good experience. I guess, like Scott, I was removed from it. I didn't have a lot to do with it. But, you know, I think it was McConaughey was one who kind of drew me in, because he wanted to meet the people that I based it on and so forth. And so I had a little bit of when they were actually filming, but it went through about 5 years of development and 16 scripts. I was not involved in all that because it was actually kind of difficult to read scripts that I thought were not there yet, and then slowly it was getting there. So I didn't have a whole lot to do with it, but I guess creative success is addictive. They did a really good job with it, and so now the next time around I want to be part of it, you know, and so if there is like a sequel or something, I'll probably be involved in writing it, and you know, because I kind of missed that I was on the sidelines for the first one.
Will you be involved then in the writing of your series?
Yeah, I mean, if the Harry Bosch series comes to pass, that I will definitely. I've invested more than almost 25 years of my life in that character, and so I just would not give it to anybody to go off and say, good luck and do well with this. I really feel like I have to be there, and as much as they don't give writers a lot of control in Hollywood, but as much as I could get, I'm taking and exercising.
Yeah, you know, I agree. You don't want to see it ruin your character either. I don't know if there's such a thing that is possible or going to go as Harry Bosch, but you want to see him depicted properly as he is.
Yeah, and so, you know, I think by being involved, you know, you're going to be, as George says, there's 100 people. It's a little city involved in creating this, and I think if I'm one of those 100 people, the people are not going to want to disappoint me. But if I'm 3,000 miles away writing my next book, I think out of sight, out of mind, and there won't be that attention to detail that I hope will happen.
Yeah, stay close and make. Can you hear me, guys? Hello?
They're getting near your microphone.
Okay.
Michael, I agree with you. Stay close and make them scared.
Yeah.
Instill fear. So David, King and Maxwell are coming to the screen. You were there for the casting, and you've seen it. You've seen the first 5 episodes. Are you happy with what happened to them?
Being a producer on the TV show is kind of like being a grandparent. You know, you get to play with the kid and have fun with the kid, and then at the end of the day, you give the kid back to the parent, and they get to go home, and you're still the good guy. My first novel, Absolute Power, was a big budget Warner Brothers production. I had really no involvement other than to go to the set and standing next to Clint Eastwood and wondering why I was there, because it was pretty cool to stand next to Clint Eastwood. And it really is very much a collaborative affair when you're working on a film project. And a film we just finished shooting, Wish You Well, which is a very personal book for me. I was a producer, I wrote the script, I was there every day, and you really got a sense of this collaborative effort there. And I agree with everyone up here that these people are incredibly talented. It is really hard to make a bad movie, much less a good movie. It's just an amazing amount of work that has to go into it to make anything that you're going to see on the screen. With the King and Maxwell series, my involvement has been, I was part of the casting. I look at all the scripts. I look at all the raw material for the episodes. I give my input. I think the best thing a writer can do, because I agree, writers have very little power. Hollywood is very much a director's town. But if you're a writer, the best thing you can do to see your material faithfully adapted is when you're looking to try to sell it to someone, to really get to know that person, to see what their vision is for the material. And sometimes you'll be surprised at what people would like to do to that material. But if you sit down with people and understand that they have a common vision with you, that's the best security you can have as a writer. It's even better than being on the set every day, because you know that this person is going to take that character from the pages. Have to mix it up a little bit because it's apples and oranges. As Scott said, at 14 hours. People will watch a movie that's 14 hours long, but you have to have 2 elements. One, you have to have a very young, very beautiful couple falling in love. And secondly, you have to have an enormous ship sinking for a really long time. If you have those 2 elements, people will watch it for days and really enjoy it. But otherwise, you have to cut it down. And so you find people who share your vision, share your values, and hopefully you cross your fingers and you have a good product that entertains people.
So let's go back to books, because after all, that's why we're here. Especially because you do write what you know, we all do, but being accurate isn't necessarily all that. You have to decide at some point what you cut, what you leave in. And I'm talking to you, Scott, in particular, because writing courtroom dramas, the legal thrillers, so to speak, very hard. That's a decision that has to be made. The audience otherwise hates you if you get too picky. How do you decide? What do you base on your decision on in terms of what to cut, what to leave in? How accurate is too accurate?
You know, there's a lot of wasted motion in the courtroom. You know, objections and questions asked 14 times. And I really don't feel that I'm leaving out that much. I'm just sort of cutting to the quick. And of course, people will say, oh, you know, your cross-examination is so accurate. And I'm like, well, you know, it's pretty easy when you write both the questions and the answers. I mean, those lawyers look like geniuses when the... So, I've always thought that I knew what was supposed to happen in a scene in the courtroom, and I just get there a little more quickly than life does.
It's nice, though, isn't it? You get to rule on your own objections. You get to tell the judge what to say. It's my favorite part, I have to tell you.
I have to say one thing about it, though, which is I think courtrooms are inherently dramatic.
Yes.
And,
yes.
You know, when I was a supervisor in the U.S. Attorney's Office in Chicago, I'd go up to watch, you know, the younger lawyers, and I couldn't get out of the room because I was just so engaged by what was happening.
Yeah, yeah, you know what, it's true. It's kind of like an emergency room or like a crime scene. You know, it's sorry, guys. What about now?
Yeah.
Courtroom is inherently dramatic. You know, you can't.
Thank you. It's actually hard to make a courtroom boring if you're writing it. Unless you're watching it on television, you watch HLN, and you see a defendant on the stand for 18 days, that's a different story. That did get boring, I'm sorry. Even if she was talking about sex. You follow the Jodi Arias case. Anyway, we'll go talk about that later. George, I wanted to ask you, this is a conundrum that no one has solved, and this might be the right place to talk about it. Do you know the difference between a mystery and a thriller?
No, not really. I don't really write mysteries because you sort of know in my books who did it. And I'm a crime novelist, that's what I would say, and proudly,
Yeah.
And I have written books that have twists and stuff like that, but that's really not my forte. It's more about character and, yeah.
So when you sit down to write a book, you come up with a premise. Do you have the whole story in mind, or do you sit and go with the flow and let your characters do what they do?
Well, I do a lot of research. I have an idea, and then I go out and I do a lot of research. And that might last for a couple months, that period, and I want to get it all done because when I come home to write the book, I don't want any excuses to leave because there's you can make a lot of excuses to leave your office. You know what I mean? Like, I think I saw a house down on 12th and Upshur. Was it blue? I better go down there. And, so I don't want any excuses. And I got all that stuff, and then I just start writing.
Yeah.
And I write 7 days a week when I'm writing a book.
7 days a week until you finish your first draft?
Yeah. Well, there is no second draft.
There.
Is my editor here?
That's it.
Sorry about that.
Who's your first reader?
Me and my editor. And my editor and I, yeah.
Yeah. Scott, who's your first reader?
Ironically, over the years, my oldest daughter, Rachel, has ended up as a pretty consistent reader, along with, Deb Futter, my editor, and Gail, my agent. But Rachel has read the first draft of everything, starting from when she was 10 years old.
Oh, my God.
So,
does she give notes?
yeah, sometimes they're eccentric, sometimes they're spot on.
Cool.
She's never, I don't understand, but she's never comfortable with the sex scenes. So.
I can't imagine what your dad wrote. TMI, Dad. Michael, who's your first reader?
My wife reads as I go, almost chapter by chapter. And then, but when I get to the end, the very next day I send it to my editor, and so she's reading it right away.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, my wife, too, is my first reader, and she's really good at telling me what's wrong with the book. And she's really good at that. I mean, it's very opinionated, very forceful person. But really, I don't need her to tell me what's right with the book. I have sort of an instinctual feel. I need her to tell me where it drags, where the characters aren't developed, where the plot twists don't make a lot of sense. And she is able to articulate that. Then it goes off to editors and other people like that. But it's good to get that first read in. As far as what do you leave out, I think Elmore Leonard had the great quote about it. He said, I just leave out the parts that people don't read anyway. If you think about it, you go back through draft after draft, you get to see those pieces. You really do, and they're quite apparent. And then you just kind of like, and there they go.
It's a process to learn that. So I want to ask one more quick question, and then we're going to go to the audience and let them grill us. Okay. So I was wondering, George, if you could tell us, everybody talks about what authors should do when a new author. Can you tell us one thing an author should never do?
I don't know. I mean, on the business side of things is let the people who are professionals take care of that for you. In other words, don't get too focused on. I used to have people when I was in the movie business, and I would have people sending me scripts, or they'd call me up and they'd say, "What's hot right now? Echo thrillers. What should I write?" I'm like, just write what you're passionate about. Don't worry about the business so much, because and I really believe that if you write a good book, it will find a home. This is not a business of nepotism for the most part. I mean, the publishers are here today. They're looking for good books, and the nice thing about being a writer is, because I don't want to ever retire, I'm not a movie star or an athlete, so I can do this until I'm dead, basically. Nobody's going to retire me, you know what I'm saying? And so stay focused on the writing. That's my advice, is just keep your head down and write.
Thank you. Scott, what do you say? What's the one thing you would tell a new author to never do?
The thing I tell them never to do is stop. The race does not go to the swift when it comes to writing. It goes to those who keep going. And, you know, it's hard to make a life in the arts in the United States. And the number one virtue you need is the ability to get up off the mat, because you're going to get knocked down.
Yes. The rejection letters, so don't let them stop you. Michael, what do you think?
More or less the same things. You know, never lick your finger and hold it up into the wind to see, you know, which the winds of commercial fiction and so forth are going. Just, it's got to come from inside, and, you know, write what you are passionate about. The other part, I mean, we were talking about all the creative people in Hollywood. You know, there's creative people in this industry, and one of the processes I learned was to stop being such a feral cat with my books, and I would write them and rewrite them and baby them, and I've gotten to the point where I know they'll be improved if I can just get them into the publishing house, and my editor takes it from there. And so I'm more trusting, way more trusting than I think a new writer would be. And I think the new writer has to get over that, know that it's going to go into the hands of people that will improve it.
Great. David, what do you say?
Well, I'd say definitely in sort of this nanosecond world we live in, where if you send out a text and you don't get a response back in 3 seconds, you wonder what's happened. That take your time, and don't think that you need to write the book in a week or a weekend. I mean, I've had people come up and say, you know, I got this great idea for a novel. I think I can knock it out over the weekend. We can sell the film rights on Monday. What do you think about that? And I said, well, not too much. So don't have a preconceived timetable, but get up every day, find something you're passionate about and interested in, and work on it. And at the end of a year or 2 or 3 or 6 or whatever it takes, you'll know when it's over. Then you have a book. But take your time, be patient. This is not a job where you get better at it by doing the same thing over and over again. You know, every other job pretty much in the world, you get better at it by doing it over and over again until all the error is taken out of it. So if I'm on a plane, I don't want the pilot to say, you know, I've flown this plane the same way every day for the last 30 years. Today I'm going to try something different. Everybody in the back, hold on. You don't want that. But as a writer, you got to get up every day and you got to think, how can I do it differently? How can I mix it up? How can I get out of my comfort zone and write about something that might sort of scare me a little bit? So don't be afraid to do that. Take your time and get out of your comfort zone.
This is all great advice. Just before we go to the audience, please tell us what comes next. What's your newest book? I think I've just read George's book, The Double, Spiro Lucas, the hottie. Can you tell us a quick line about that?
Thank you. Yeah, The Double comes out in October. It's the sequel to The Cut, and it's another sort of a sexy, violent crime novel. Kind of kicks ass. That's the best I can tell you. If you like that sort of thing, you're going to like this.
It's a great book. Scott.
My next novel is called Identical. It comes out in October. It's about identical twins, one of them running for mayor, the other being released from prison after serving 25 years for killing his girlfriend. I also want to add one thing on a personal note, which is I remain a writer groupie. And to me, it is just a thrill to be up here with this company. And everybody up here I have read for years for different reasons. Marcia, because of course I knew you from television and watching the OJ trial. David, because our mutual publisher was so enthusiastic from the beginning. Michael, because I practiced law with his sister. And George, I read because we were both nominated for a literary prize, and he won and I didn't. And I read the book and I understood why. So, but this is great company to be able to keep.
Let me echo that. It's amazing to be here on the stage with you guys. I mean, all of my beloved authors in one spot. It's fantastic. A great honor.
I'm happy to be here too. But my book it comes out December 2nd. It's called The Gods of Guilt, and it's a Lincoln Lawyer novel. It's the 5th book I've written about Mickey Haller, but it's more of a direct sequel to the first book because it involves an important character in the Lincoln Lawyer who gets murdered, one of Mickey's former clients, and he gets involved because he was emotionally attached.
Fabulous.
I was thrilled about the invitation to be here because, like everybody else up here, I've read all their books. And when Marcia sent me, I think it was her first novel a couple of years ago, when you get these books, you just hope, because you like the person a lot. We'd been on a TV show together a long time ago, and I was thinking, please let this book be good. Please let it be good. And it was not good. It was great. And she got a terrific blurb, and I meant every word of it. So it was a thrill to be up here. We don't get to do this that often, so this is just really, really nice. My next book comes out in November. It's King and Maxwell, 6th book in the King and Maxwell series. Sean King and Michelle Maxwell. He's the more cerebral. She's the one who can kick everybody's ass. I write about strong, independent women because that's all I've ever known in my whole life. My mother was a force of nature, my sister, my wife. I don't write about damsels in distress because I don't happen to know any. And so that's just me. So King and Maxwell in November.
Fabulous. These sound wonderful. I urge you to read them all. Of course, you know I don't have to tell you how great they are. So, anybody, any questions?
Okay. Good morning. Can you hear me? Oh, hello? Oh,
There we go.
good morning. Congratulations on your success, all of the panel. My question is two-part. I'm wondering, in the earlier days when you were probably balancing a job with writing, how did you do so? And secondly, starting with your first novel, what did you do to build a readership in terms of marketing and things of that nature? Thank you.
Who wants to start first? Okay.
Thank you. For my first 8 novels, I had a full-time job during the day. So I would get up early in the morning, and then I would come home at night and write. And I just considered it to be my second job. I was holding down 2 jobs. And I had babies, you know, so that was motivation for me. When I got up in the morning, I tied my shoes on tight and I went to work, you know. But you got to love it. In order to do that, and you sort of sacrifice I wasn't watching a lot of ball games on TV and all these things that you give up. You got to love your other job too. So, you know, again, like I said before, be passionate about it, love it. You'll be all right.
As I said, after having a lifelong dream of being a novelist, I became a lawyer. And the deal I made with myself was that I wasn't going to let myself go dead as a writer. So I wrote longhand every morning on the commuter train, and then often late at night on the weekends when my children were in bed, things like that. And I just knew I had to keep going. In terms of building a readership, I was so blessed to be struck by lightning with Presumed Innocent that I never really had to think about it that way. The one thing I will say, and I don't know if my wonderful publishers who are here or my agent will choke me for saying this, but I think when you have been as lucky as all of us have been, you cannot let your audience's expectations dominate you. You still have to do what we've all talked about, which is write what matters to you. Because it'll just be, you know, self-imitative drivel if you succumb to what you think people expect.
I think the key to my success was that we decided not to have children till I got into this world. So, because it does take a lot of time. I know writers who have accomplished or are in the process, and they're balancing their main job or their full-time job, their families, and then trying to find space to write. And that's the key thing, to find space to write. Almost every writer I know balance these things. Luckily, I didn't have children yet, so I was able to really kind of make a deal with my wife to spend 4 or 5 nights a week away writing one day of every weekend. And like George, you give up stuff, but you're so passionate about what you're doing. You're not sitting there saying, I wish I was watching that game. I'm very thankful I'm here with my computer. It's about gathering momentum and finding ways of keeping it, and it all comes down to passion. You know, if you can't wait, when you're working your other job, if you can't wait to get back to the story you're writing, then I think you're on the right path.
I was a trial lawyer for most of my career. I'd been writing a long time before that. I wrote in the middle of the night. It was the only time where I had really. You may not like lawyers, but they do work hard. They sell their time 1 hour or a half hour at a time, so that's all they have to sell. I remember years ago I was talking to a friend of mine who was a judge, and I said, you know, what I really want to do is sit around and just really make up stories out of nothing. And he said, well, you're already doing that. You're a lawyer. But, you know, being a lawyer really is a great training ground for storytelling, because as a lawyer you're paid to tell a story, and you have a trial record that you really can't fudge, and the other side is the same set of facts, and you have to take that trial record and you have to spin it in a way that best represents your client's interest within ethical considerations. So for me it was just a love of storytelling, and if I'm not writing, I'm not happy. I'm very uncomfortable. If I'm in between books, I'm moody and I'm pissed off and I'm walking around, and I just, until I get that groove back, until I'm in the zone of another story, that's how intense it really has to be. And it's a natural evolutionary thing. If you're meant to be a writer, I think you will be a writer, because when that first rejection comes, if you love it, if you love what you're doing and you can't keep away from the writing, it's like you have Kevlar body armor, and that rejection hits you like a bullet and it stings like a bitch for a while, but then it goes away and you keep going. If you don't love it, the writing part, and you get that first rejection, it's going to wipe you out and you're dead. So you weren't meant to be a writer anyway, and you're going to go off and do something else and maybe be very successful. But that's the sort of personality it takes. And the second part to your question, early on, what do you do to promote and all that? I went everywhere anyone asked me to go, everywhere. You know, whether it was a BEA or regional conferences overseas, you know, a woman calls up, hi, I'm Betty, I'm in Idaho, I have 2 people in a book club, can you come for dinner tonight? I'll be there, Betty. So you just go everywhere you possibly could go. And I tell young writers, aspiring writers, no one will care about your career more than you will. Not your publisher, though they may love you, not their agent, though they may love you, you. It starts, it ends with you.
Good sound advice. And I have to say about rejection, that is true. The book before the one I just got published was one that I wrote night and day while carrying a full caseload. And, you know, literally there was no sleeping for a few years. And when I got that first rejection, it stung really bad. It cut me in two. And then I stood up and said, damn it, I'm going to do it right. I know I can do this. And if you don't have that kind of feeling about it, you're not wedded to it, then it's never going to work. But if you are, there you go. Yeah. Next.
This message is for, this question is for Mr. Connelly. When the first Richard Castle book came out, I was totally confounded, since he was a character at a television program. And we'll keep it in the room right here. Are you writing the Richard Castle books?
No. Oh, sorry. No, I don't know how that rumor got started, but no. I swear, I'm not the writer of Richard Castle books.
Would you like to
It's
tell
him.
us who is?
No, but you do play poker. It's not the same as writing a book.
To all the panelists, what is your favorite or most cherished book you have on your shelves right now?
What is your most favorite book on your shelf right now?
Of our own?
I think, no, not your own. David?
Is this new or like an all-time favorite? It doesn't matter. Okay. Probably one of my favorites is In Cold Blood, and that was the first nonfiction novel. And I read that book when I was in college. I worked my way through college. I was a Pinkerton security guard. And I went in for an interview with Pinkerton at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I was in uniform at 7 o'clock that night. The training was intense, let me tell you. And so the place I was guarding for $3 an hour, it was a big electrical plant, so everywhere you went on your key round, anything that you touched would kill you instantly. So I never left the guard shack, and I stayed in the guard shack, and I read In Cold Blood and scared the crap out of me. But that's really the first time I thought about maybe turning to like crime fiction, even though this was a nonfiction book. It was told in a novelistic sort of way. and has been a compelling read for me and has been a great influence on me for a long time. So that one is pretty high up on the bookshelf.
I think it'd be really hard to pick one book, but I think I can make an argument for The Long Goodbye by Raymond Chandler being a book that kind of changed my life or had sent me down the road of being a writer. But, you know, since I'm here to promote my next book, Gods of Guild, I would say that the whole Mickey Haller thing comes out of an amalgamation of To Kill a Mockingbird and Presumed Innocent. Those two books were really the influences that, first of all, that made me love reading legal thrillers. I know Kill a Mockingbird is supposedly the great American novel, but it's also a great legal thriller. And it was those two things that influenced this character now that I've written 5 books about.
Well, like Michael, I think it would be a poor world if there was only one book to read. Different books have meant an immense amount to me at different points in time. Certainly Graham Greene's The Power and the Glory really gave me a deep sense of how suspense and literature really could be merged, and so it's a very important book to me. In the last 5 years, the book I've recommended the most among new books, strangely enough, is Patti Smith's Just Kids, which I think is an overwhelming book about love and art and the unpredictable ways that both of them work.
True Grit by Charles Portis. It's my favorite novel. And I should also add there's a book that's not very well known. It's called Hard Rain Falling by Don Carpenter, which I think is an undiscovered classic from the 60s.
Great choices, all of them. I'm going to move on now to the lightning round because it's too much fun. And this is kind of like the Inside Actors Studio questions, kind of like, but my version of them. Okay, don't be scared. Okay, what is your favorite word? You get one answer.
Fuck.
Yes. Go, Scott.
Shit.
Yeah, man.
Fuck shit.
Oh, damn. Hold on to it.
Okay.
That's good. Okay, then wait a minute. We've probably already blown this one. I was going to say, what's your favorite curse word?
Yeah.
I'll start. Cunt. Can't beat it, right? Okay.
Yeah, here, mine.
I didn't realize that was a curse word.
Golf.
I'm not doing this.
All right, do you have a least favorite word?
No.
Really?
That's the word.
How about moist?
Moist.
Anything with an OI. Ointment, moist. Nothing good comes of this.
I mean, I like moist, actually.
You like moist?
Yeah, I mean.
There you go.
I like moist.
Keep going, Marcia.
No, I can't. Least favorite word? No more? No.
Yeah, there's certain words that, you know, just strike me as overused, like yummy. So.
Yes. Or literally,
Yeah.
when it really isn't. Okay.
I don't like using words that I don't know how to pronounce, like homage and homage and endive, stuff like that.
That was good. I like that. Yeah. More, because that was, as you know, my kids are grown now. When they were little, all I ever heard was more, more, more. So.
When I remember my little kids, mom, 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 mom. Really, 100 times in a row, really fast. They're good at it. They're really good at it. All right, guys, on a more serious note, what would in your mind be the least favorite profession? The thing you'd least like to do in your life?
Coal mining.
Tow truck operator.
I once worked in a fire extinguisher factory, removing the smelted cylinders as they came out of the blast furnace. And I can tell you that truly that was the job from hell.
It sounds like.
My best job was selling women's shoes. And seriously, I mean, if anybody wants a middle-aged shoe salesman, nobody really does. I'm your guy. Anything you got to do to sit, you know, any bureaucratic job would just not be for me. Anything where you're sitting at a desk, pretty much.
Yeah. I would have to say, in general, management. Any management position. That sounds
just like hell to me. All right, what trait do you find most admirable in a person?
I like, well, just let's take women, okay? I like women who are smart and funny and you know, artistic, independent, all those things.
That's a lot of, okay, pick one, just one. What's your favorite most?
Good looking.
I value loyalty most in human beings. So many other things, but loyalty first.
Yeah.
Relentlessness.
Genuine.
Yeah, honesty. Humility. I would say, also, then let's tell about your least favorite trait for a person.
Not being genuine.
It almost jumped on
Relentlessness.
You know, I would say dishonesty, especially from those who don't realize they're being dishonest.
Oh my God, scariest of all.
Just insecurity.
Great answers, wonderful answers. Guys, this wraps it up. I want to thank you so much for being the best panel
Thank
in
you
the
all.
world. Love you guys. Thank you. Thank you. You're awesome. No.